Good evening, everybody. Welcome. We are live from Books and Books right here in Coral Gables. If I could get you all to silence your cell phones very quickly. I was just looking at the weather here. Boston 37, Green Bay 23, Chicago 36, Coral Gables 74. My name is... Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Steve. My name is Steve. On behalf of everyone here at Books and Books, we welcome you. We're very happy to have you with us. Please pick up a copy of our Books and Books newsletter. This will give you a synopsis of all the wonderful events we have at Books and Books every night of the week. We have 60 plus every month. We have Spanish books. We have kids events, poetry readings, first-time authors, even celebrity signings. As I say, there's always something for everyone's taste. Many of them are now being live streamed through the internet. There's a couple of cameras here you can see. You can watch this later on if you want to archive. Check the archive out. And I will just tell you, for the benefit of those who may be watching through the internet all around the world, I don't want a repeat of what happened last night, so just make sure you're sitting next to who you're supposed to be sitting next to. Again, I encourage you to go to booksandbooks.com for more information. You can also give us your email address. That way we can alert you to everything that goes on here at the store. You'll never be lonely with the amount of emails we send out, but at least you won't be missing anything that goes on, because we do have so many wonderful things happening. And if you do decide to watch via the internet, you can always give us a call at the store here on the number on your screen. You can get a book signed by the authors as it may be tonight, and we'll have it shipped to you free of charge for shipping here in the U.S. And you can also ask some questions of the author as the event is going on. So that's a very nice thing to have. But tonight we are very happy to have with us Jaquira Díaz and 15 Views of Miami. 15 Views of Miami is a literary portrait of the Magic City told in 15 loosely linked stories by 15 Miami authors. Sprawling from Hialeah to Homestead, from Wynwood to Stiltsville, these stories cover a range of cultures, languages, and lives, reflecting the diversity and drama of a large and often misunderstood city. Contributors, I mean, if anybody knows this city, these authors do. They're not quite considered contributors as they are excellent authors. John Dufresne, Evelina Galang, she always glares at me if I say Galang, so I say the right thing. Lynn Barrett, Patricia Engel, and many award-winning authors. Editor Jaquira Díaz was born in Puerto Rico. She was raised in Miami. Her work has been awarded a Pushcart Prize, has been selected as Notable and Best American Essays in 2012, and will be anthologized in Girls on Fire and Sins and Needles, Writers and Their Tattoos. She was a Tennessee Williams Scholar, and her work has appeared in Best of the Small Presses, the Kenyon Review, the Sun, the Southern Review, Southeast Review, and the Los Angeles Review, among many others. Please give her a nice warm welcome, Jaquira Díaz.
Thank you so much. First, my name is Jaquira Díaz, and happy Martin Luther King Day. I want to thank you all for coming and for celebrating with us. First, I want to thank Lynn Barrett for making this event possible. She is awesome, and if you haven't told her so today, tell her she's awesome. And thank you to Books and Books for having us. To our 15 wonderful writers for your time and your talents and your generosity. And of course, to Burrow Press. For those of you who aren't familiar with the small press that published this beautiful book, Burrow Press publishes literary fiction and nonfiction and is a program of the Urban Think Foundation, a nonprofit that supports community-based programs that provide reading and writing education, free after-school tutoring, and creative writing workshops for public school kids. 15 Views of Miami is a collection of loosely connected short stories set in 15 different Miami neighborhoods. Each story is linked either thematically or using an image, a character, or place. And part of the fun of reading it is finding those connections. As I was bringing together the 15 authors that make up 15 Views of Miami, my goal was to make this list as diverse as possible in order to showcase the wealth of literary writers in Miami and the literary landscape of the city. It was important to me that this collection, which is in many ways a celebration of the real Miami, reflect its diversity. You'll find in these pages writers and characters from different cultures, a variety of languages, of styles. You'll find ugliness and pain, but also beauty, art, love, and ghosts. There are several rumors surrounding the origins of the 15 Views series, including some you may have heard, that it began as a drinking game at an iconic Miami strip club, or that it was inspired by a real estate mogul who had just bought 15 different mansions in the city. But the truth is, the series was inspired by the late Jeannie Libby, who was a professor at the University of Central Florida and editor of the Florida Review and later the Southern Review. Jeannie was a mentor and friend to many young writers and was and is revered in literary circles in part because when she accepted a story for publication, she liked to call the writer herself and witness their reaction as she gave them the good news. Those of us who dreamed of getting our stories published in the Southern Review refer to this as getting the call. I was lucky enough to get the call from Jeannie back in 2010 before she died, and I imagine that she made those calls because nothing brought her more joy than making a young writer's literary dreams into reality. Jeannie also believed in the importance of diversity and gender equity. During her tenure at the Southern Review, she published more women and people of color than any one of her predecessors. I don't remember what I said to her on the phone during the call, but I remember celebrating, and Jeannie celebrated with me. So tonight, as we celebrate the release of 15 Views of Miami and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, we also celebrate Jeannie. In my introduction to the 15 Views of Miami anthology, I talk a bit about how I never saw myself in books or people who looked like me or who lived in neighborhoods like mine when I was growing up. And so I started writing stories about Puerto Rican girls in Miami as a way of revising these worlds where I found that people like me were invisible, people who were brown or queer or poor, who spoke other languages, did not exist in these books. And so books, they save lives, and they saved me. And I think as lovers of books, we all know this. And as we celebrate the work of Dr. Martin Luther King, I want you all to consider the importance of reading diversely and putting diverse books in the hands of all young readers. We have 5 very talented authors reading tonight. And we also have some contributors in the audience, some of the other writers who may not be reading tonight, but are also here to sign books for you guys. Up first, we have Evelina Galang, and then we have Lynn Barrett and Jeffrey Philp, MJ Fievre, and John Dufresne. And please stay with us so that we can have a conversation. We have a Q&A right after the reading, and we also will be signing books for you. So put your hands together for Evelina Galang.
Thank you, Jaquira. That was a beautiful introduction and a lovely way to pay homage to Dr. King. Thank you. So I'm going to kick it off with my story, Imelda's Lullaby. We have 7 minutes each, so it's a teaser, it's a trailer, it's a part of the story. You'll have to read to find out the ending. And I just wanted to say that when I got the invitation to be a part of this, I thought it was a great way of thinking about Miami. When Chris Abani, the writer, comes to town and I drive him around in the car and he's looking out the window at all the different neighborhoods, the comment he always makes is, there are so many Miamis. There's not like one Miami, there are so many Miamis. So here is a part of my Miami. Imelda's Lullaby. She lies on a cot at the foot of the old woman's bed, the aircon humming just under La Doña's snoring respirator. Across the room, the curtains blow just high enough to reveal a sliver of the moon. Imelda squints, wishes Manila were just outside that window, not Miami. La Doña is thick-boned and fat and so still that even with the machine, Imelda rises just to check. She places her small hand on the old one's belly, lets it rest until she feels La Doña's breath, the fall and rise of it steady and deep. Asleep like this, dead like this, there is something beautiful about the old one. The lines on her face smooth away like creases on silken sheets, and the cheekbones rise high and regal. The mouth, hidden under the mask, is set in an eternal pout. La Doña insists on lipstick. What if there's emergency in the middle of the night? Y mi cara fea. Even sleeping she is difficult, Imelda thinks. Plastic rollers and thick black bobby pins circle the old woman's face like a magnificent pink halo. Awake, the old woman's fea comes out. She screams fast Spanish, swallows her consonants, and spits bits of chewed-up food at Imelda. La Doña, malcriada widow, living alone at the edge of the Gables, her children scattered like seed, New York, San Francisco, Chicago, not a single one fallen close to this old tree. This vieja reminds Imelda of her ate Remedios, the spinster Lola, never able to keep her nurses. They run away on her, climb the iron gates, and slip across the borders like butiki in the night. Ta oyon, she told her ate once. Why make them sleep on floors? They are help, her tia answered. Hindi familia, hindi kaibigan. I pay them to work. Beds are for guests. Imelda wipes La Doña's brow. At least you give me a cot, she whispers. From inside, a breath escapes, deep and low like a secret. On nights like these, she thinks about the other side of this life, where it is daylight and the city is thick with traffic. Cocks are crowing, and she wakes to the melody of a lullaby, soft and low and floating like wind. Sunlight surrounds the house then, fills it with the noise of the city. Back home, Imelda was the youngest beauty of 3 daughters. In a house of maids and cooks and drivers, her mother taught the sisters how to direct the cook, the lavandera, the katulong who scrubbed the floors. She went to all-girl convent schools and never talked to boys, though she knew they were watching. And by the time she was 20, she married Armando Chin, a businessman who owned an aircon factory. He was ambitious and worked long hours. He gave her a house in Makati with marble floors and terraces filled with sweet sampaguita blossoms. They raised a beautiful family. He gave her everything. I was always too nice, she thinks. La Doña spits up thick mucus, and Imelda leaps to the bedside, holding the mask off the bitter face and gently washing with a damp cloth. The old one seizes, then crumples up like tissue. Leave me, China, she shouts. Espera, señora, Imelda says. Pare! Her arms rise up like 2 walking legs. The hands sprawl fat and lush. The red fingernails try to dig into Imelda's light skin. Tranquila, she tells the old woman, or I will sing. Imelda holds her breath, but the sour smell of the dying seeps past her, soaks into her own skin, and still she washes little rivers of vomit that have trickled down La Doña's chin, wipes the perspiration from her own brow. Did my son call? Asked La Doña. No, señora. Y mi hija, los dos? No, señora. La Doña might have been an old spinster. The phone in this house never rings. What do you know? La Doña hisses. You're not even a nurse. No, señora, I'm not. But I'm all you have. Cheap help. Your only help. Illegal help, China. Imelda ignores the insults, though her Spanish is nearly excellent. Instead, she thinks, Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us. She sings to the old woman, and that's when she sees La Doña has wet her bedding. When Imelda found the letters, she threw things out of the balcony, didn't even bother to bag the laundry, to box the toiletries, to unplug his clocks and stereos and speakers. Those things she yanked from the walls and hurled onto their terrace patio to crush and break and scatter. He cut her off. He cut the children off. He told her she had grown soft and plain and matronly. What did you think I would do, he asked her. How could she have missed this? 15 years. She found a job in the Ayala Museum and fed the children herself. She spent money on them as if he were still in the house. Margarita went to the beauty parlor twice a week to have her coarse hair blow-dried for 1,000 pesos each visit. Junjun partied with his barkada at swanky clubs and hotels in Makati. She held on to the help. Mahirap kami, she told the cook. She paid a little less and started washing dishes. Please, ma'am, don't. Nakakahiya. Please, kitchen ko. I am the one who is embarrassed. She gave the maids weekends off and learned to wash the laundry. Don't handle me like that, China, snaps the old lady. I'm not a baby. Permiso, señora, she answers, head bowed, eyes down. But inside she thinks, and yet you soil yourself as if you are. Imelda must bend her knees and take a breath to roll the old woman to her side, to pull the sheets out from under her, wash her backside dry. Let me clean you first and then we'll sit up. It's the middle of the night, China. Just for a while, until I change the bedding. You'd think they'd check on me, huh? Just once or twice? Me estoy muriendo. You are not dying. ¿Eres médica? Silence. I didn't think so, China. It isn't just the urine, the pale yellow of human stink rising from the wet sheets. It's the smell of decay, of breath fermented by the night. Imelda rolls the body bit by bit, singing softly to herself, turning the backside, the torso, the shoulders. She washes the vieja with her right hand and with her elbow, with her whole body, and with the other arm she holds her up. China, you're too small to handle this. I can handle this. I do, don't I? Faster, China, I'm cold. La Doña's body is a fat loaf of unbaked bread, oozing from her frame, and under this moonlight it appears to be rising fast with yeast. Imelda closes her eyes. Thank you.
Hi. If I don't think it quite got said, but we wrote these stories in order, and we each had about a week, sometimes a little bit more, to write a story of a couple thousand words. So my story comes not only after Evelina's. There's several other stories that are in there before mine, and at least two of them refer to some events in Homestead in which there's a young woman called La Nina. She's very young. She has a long black braid, and someone who may or may not be her brother, who's not nice. And I was responding partly to that, and that pops up in my story, but I was also responding to Evelina's, particularly about the choices someone has faced with certain kinds of crises. So I created a character who has some different experience and resources and can respond kind of to the same crisis differently, because I think that's a sort of important thing for us to understand, that we have characters, but we also have circumstances that determine what we can do. My character's name is Sharon Lawler. Her story is set on a Saturday in January in the Upper East Side of Miami, and she's an older woman. She's a dealer in vintage clothing and jewelry. And I'm skipping through mine to try to give you just one kind of thread of the story. So she's gone out in the morning. She's left home where she has got morning glories. The story is called Morning Glories, growing up on what looks like a trellis, but it's actually an old chair that she took apart to make into a trellis. And she goes out onto Biscayne Boulevard. People are brunching outside at a hip eatery that's opened in a formerly run-down motel. When she was a child, the motels here were a tourist draw, but then came decline, prostitution, drugs, and crime that drove fearful homeowners out of the surrounding neighborhoods. Many of them really more alarmed, Sharon thinks, at hearing Spanish and Creole, and good riddance to them. New people, risk takers, fond of deco buildings and a bargain, bought in. With those who'd stayed, they formed a tribe of the resilient, pushing for police enforcement and rescuing past beauty. She's loved being part of this revival. She likes, more than anything, reuse. Make do, the Victorians called it, repairing, repurposing. And so as she goes on down Biscayne, she arrives at the shop, a vintage clothing shop of a friend of hers, Stefan, to whom she occasionally sells things that she hasn't already sold at shows and so on. And when she goes in, Stefan is busy talking to a man who happens to be wearing snakeskin cowboy boots that, if you'd read a previous story, you know might be stolen. He's handsome, but his mouth is tight. Perhaps his snakeskin cowboy boots pinch. A bit of a brute, but attractive. Young people would never believe that a woman deep into middle age observes lustfully, but appraisal at a glance is strong in her, as much for a man as a mantilla. He has a canvas bag spread open showing a camera case, not vintage. Out of the changing stall pops a young woman, her dark hair in a long braid, wearing the piano shawl dress Sharon brought in last week. In 1910, it was a grand square of ivory silk embroidered with fantastical red and blue flowers bordered in long, knotted fringe. Decades later, someone folded it on the diagonal, opened a simple neckline, cut into the sides to form sleeves, and seamed it with silk thread. It would look blousy on anyone not young and slim, but for this girl, the dress flashes and slithers. The points front and back drip fringe to the tops of her strappy shoes. So Sharon's sizing up that she's trying to buy the dress, the man won't let her, and meanwhile, he's trying to sell various things, including some watches, but Stefan's not going to buy them. And she moves on to her weekly hairdressing appointment, which she thoroughly enjoys every minute of it through the blow dry. And then she moves on to the Upper East Side Farm Market, which is at the entrance to Legion Park. She buys a jar of honey and, turning, recognizes the girl, now wearing a white top and skinny jeans, at a stand that sells drinks blended from fresh fruit. There's the man in the snakeskin boots by the papayas. The seller, a man in a broad straw hat, gives the girl a strawberry-colored smoothie. No money changes hands. They know each other, Sharon assumes. The beat-up canvas bag on the ground by the man's boots looks empty. He must have cashed in what he had to sell somewhere. Both men watch the girl pull pink liquid through a straw, her pretty lips. And then Sharon turns away and starts back north, thinking about the man who taught her the brevity of a girl's power. Peter Lawler. She still has his last name. She slept with him in college and was immediately bound by expectations. Marriage after graduation, teaching high school history while he did his PhD. She'd been interested in the Victorians. He liked American radicals. 2 children. He was angrier after the second, their son. Moving for his teaching job at a small college in Pennsylvania. In theory, it was her turn to study, but there was no graduate program. She was a department secretary, her hours constructed around on-campus daycare. Professor Lawler needed to turn his dissertation into a publishable book. On weekends, after he'd yelled about his need for quiet so he could for once concentrate, he typed and then went out to watch sports. Till one day, emptying his wastebasket, she saw, among crumpled pages, a draft of a love letter. Crouched, reading it, she found she wasn't surprised. Marriages made before the full flowering of availability were crashing all around them. She would have liked to fuck somebody else, too, if she'd had the chance. She remembered how, when she stood up, it occurred to her he'd left the letter on purpose, wanting her to blow up. So she didn't. She assembled evidence, bargained to go back to Miami with the children, and took a lump sum settlement. The next wife was a rich girl. Perhaps it was wrong not to tell the school he slept with students, but they denied him tenure anyway. At their daughter's wedding, Dr. Peter Lawler, an administrator at a charter school in Tampa, I know, that was my revenge, at a charter school in Tampa, was a balding stranger with a third wife. Still, Sharon remembers the width of his shoulders in his sweaty dorm cot when she was 19 and how he'd praised her chestnut hair and high, pointy breasts. Who'd believe those breasts would become so plump and difficult to harness? Fortunately, she's had some discreet fun while raising the kids and living with her parents, and more fun later, though she cherished her independence. There was a dull spell after she hit menopause, but then Ray, an antiques dealer just a few years older, took an interest. What does it matter that the silk shawl dress would look silly on her? She does yoga and can walk miles without getting winded. She and Ray have been involved for a while, but decided to keep separate houses and enjoy what they have without marrying. Or that's what she asked for, and he agreed. And now he's texted her to say, "Meet you at new restaurant." She uses the phone to learn that in the Victorian language of flowers, the morning glory stands for love in vain. She assumes it's because each flower blooms one morning and shrivels by sunset. Yes, damn that Peter Lawler. So they meet at the restaurant, which is now on the back edge of the Upper East Side, which is where the railroad tracks are, which is kind of a real estate kind of boundary that's being pushed against. And I should also mention that she's noticed that there was an article in the New Times about all the cool stuff to do on the Upper East Side on a Saturday, which comes in. So she meets up with Ray. They have some wine. He talks about something, and it triggers her thinking about the piano shawl dress And no sooner does she think about it than she sees the girl wearing it, her hair loose over her shoulders. The man's hand is on her back as they cross the courtyard and sit at the bar just inside the wide doorway. The man orders red wine with a snap of his fingers. She got him to buy the drink, the dress, Sharon thinks, and now he's angry. Like that outfit? Ray asks. I sold the dress to Stefan. I saw these two there this morning. The guy was trying to sell some things that were stolen. Well, too new. Stefan wasn't buying. The canvas bag hangs from the back of the man's high seat at the bar. Sharon imagines the girl's jeans and top rolled up inside. She looks too young to get served, Ray whispers. Sharon tries not to stare into the bar. Stefan's shop, the farmer's market, the bistro. The girl read the New Times piece and wanted a great day out, she thinks, and persuaded him it would work for whatever he was after. The man has downed his wine. The girl frowns, then rushes hers. He drops money on the bar, stands and grabs his bag. The girl steps down and pauses, smoothing her dress, and catches Sharon's eye. Let him go, Sharon thinks. The girl tosses her hair back and follows him. Ray asks, "What is it, honey?" She hushes him. As the girl strides by, the ripples in her hair catch sunlight. The silk fringes dance. What will become of her? Who is stronger? Sharon knows she'll never find out. This is just one of those glimpses you get, one moment in the city's unknown epic of desire and aspiration and loss. And I'll stop there, though there's a little bit more to go. Thank you.
Greetings. So good to be among so many friends. For a change. My story is called My People, and it's really speculative fiction. Not because of the ghosts, but because the main character is a gay Jamaican man, and no such thing exists. Stealing my nerves, I'd just lit a spliff and opened my third bottle of Red Stripe when my nosebleed began. Placing the spliff on the ashtray in the middle of the love seat I used to share with Dorothy, my wife, I leaned back and stuffed a tissue in my nose. As I gazed at the ceiling fan, I wondered why the nosebleeds had become so frequent. Before Dorothy died 9 days ago, I never got nosebleeds. But now it's every evening when I come home to this empty house, wondering what I'm going to microwave for dinner. Back in Jamaica, even if you had been an only child and both your parents died, this would never have happened. For 9 nights of mourning, family and friends would have been visiting with food and drink. But in America, you live alone and you die alone. Dust had gathered on the edges of the fan blades. Dorothy had asked me to clean them, but I had been distracted. Chalk it up to one more chore I needed to do since we brought this house back from the dead. The bleeding stopped, so I leaned forward. My head felt like a swollen pumpkin. The room was suddenly cold. When I looked up, a white man was sitting on the sofa in front of me. The hairs on my arm stood on end. "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned," he said, and crossed his leg. I almost jumped out of the chair. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" "Name's Bill Faulkner. I'm the original owner." But I thought, yes, I'm dead, suicide, I'm stuck here. I felt like running, but I couldn't. When you come from Jamaica, duppies are a serious matter. I thought I was hallucinating. Carlton, my herbsman, must have laced my weed. But Carlton would never do that. He's been growing the best weed in Miami for as long as I've known him. "You still haven't answered my question," I said, reverting to my best lawyer attorney's tone. "I don't know how I've been able to do this. Since you and your wife moved in, I've amused myself by slamming doors and windows." "That was you?" "And the occasional brushing up against your wife. It was enough to scare away the other owners, but you stayed. Why?" I've put too much work into this house, and I know a good bargain when I see one. My mother said the same thing when she bought it back in 1958. What year is it now? 2013? You don't know? You can't measure eternity. I've gauged the passing of time by the people who have lived here. You're the second black family to move in, so I imagine the times have changed. How are things for your people? My people. For some reason, that phrase bothered me. I still couldn't believe what was happening. What would my clients think? I, the most business-minded and the only confirmed atheist in my firm, was having a conversation with a ghost? Excuse me, I said, and got up from the love seat. Now I understood why the house, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath with a pool, went for only 100,000, had been on the market for so long. Cynthia, our real estate agent, had mentioned supernatural events in the house, which scared Dorothy. I dismissed it as female hysteria. I guess I was now a believer. I walked over to the kitchen sink and filled a glass of water. The phrase had stuck with me. Who were my people? Were they the Jamaicans who had been leaving the island since our unofficial civil war? My Haitian brothers who were still fleeing after the earthquake? My African American brothers who were now celebrating Black History Month? I finished the glass of water and walked back over to the love seat. I put out the spliff and sipped the red stripe, which was now warm. Hot or cold, red stripe is still better than insipid Miller. What do you mean by my people? You know exactly what I mean, he said. It's why your wife killed herself. How did you? You were the one fucking your client upstairs when she caught you. The police said it was an accident. And you, a black lawyer, believe everything the police tell you? But why? You know why. Did he know everything? I wanted to light the spliff, but I didn't. I used to turn on the television. I tried to turn on the television, but it didn't work. Nothing electrical worked, and soon it would be night. My nosebleed started again. Dorothy knew I was gay from the first time she tried to kiss me. Even after I told her, she still agreed to get married after we graduated from law school. We also made a deal that we'd never have children. She may have been in love with me, but I wasn't in love with her. It was strictly a business arrangement. Dorothy allowed me to have my affairs as long as I was discreet and maintained our image in the community. And it's not like I was going to come out. No Jamaican, no matter how desperate he was, would hire a Batman lawyer. They would rather go to a straight lawyer, no matter how incompetent he was. Besides, Dorothy had gotten what she wanted. We were a famous power couple fighting for the rights of our people. We were photographed at every charity event, meetup, and fundraiser, congressional and presidential, in Miami. We even had a picture with President Obama. I closed my eyes, squeezed my nose, and leaned back again for about a minute. When I released my hold, Bill was still there. I'd love to stay and chat, but I gotta go. I hope he was worth it, he said. Sometimes life gives us exactly what we want, but there's always a hidden price.
Hello, everyone. I was inspired by Lynn's story. She has sentences like, the city's unknown epic of desire and aspiration and loss, and marriage falling apart, and the brevity of a girl's power. And it all inspired me for my story, Sinkhole. The week I was working on the story for the book, there was a sinkhole somewhere in North Florida, and it kind of brought the story together. And I'm going to do just like Lynn. I'm reading sections of the story and trying to keep a storyline going. So Sinkhole. When the earth opened up and swallowed her husband Jonah whole, Pika feared that her life and all its private lies would be exposed. Reporters from the Miami Herald and the Sun Sentinel swarmed her mother-in-law's Botanica, curious about the newly widowed Pika and the little Haiti man who'd been gulped down by the sinkhole. She tried to look devastated enough, but truth was, she and Jonah had been sleeping in separate bedrooms for a while now. She'd considered leaving him, but her raven-haired Italian lover Bruno needed the money, and quite frankly, Pika enjoyed being kept. Jonah had money in trust funds, lots of it, and Pika didn't want to go back to waitressing at Le Bébé, the Haitian diner. Jonah hadn't pushed for a divorce. He loved showing off his young and beautiful wife at banquets and fundraising galas, a body confident and tall, and she knew to hold him close in public and whisper in his ear as other investors drank martinis and referred to the neighborhood as Buena Vista, not Little Haiti, a name that brought images of dark-skinned boat people. She'd spent that Thursday afternoon with Bruno, while Jonah, recovering from allergies, took a nap in the claustrophobic, soon-to-sink master bedroom. Bruno and she were a tangle of arms, legs, mouths, hands, and skin, and no one could say where sex began and ended. Pika felt womanly, testing the world for its possibilities. She'd returned home just in time to hear the deafening noise and find Jonah's room gone. His king-size bed, his mahogany dresser, his widescreen TV. Pika jumped into the hole and frantically shoved away rubble with her bare hands, mapping in her mind the irises of Jonah's eyes, the palms of his hands, the sound of his voice. She didn't hear the police sirens. She didn't feel the landslide pinning her body parts. Although it was as if her body was sinking into flames, she didn't realize she was trapped, waist deep in rocks, until a sheriff's deputy pulled her to safety next to her mother-in-law, Filomena, a woman gone mad, hollering at the sky, blaming Pika, la bruja, for this tragedy. You don't want a baby, and the baby dies. You don't want my son, and the earth swallows him whole. Maybe Pika still smelled of sex. She'd wanted to shower, but in Bruno's apartment, the water was brown, no matter how long you ran it. Something rumbled the next street over, and Pika thought another sinkhole, while she waited for the ground to crack and crumble. But then there was the beep-beep of the truck backing up. On Saturday, the rescue team gave up on looking for Jonah, and on Sunday, a giant wrecked backhoe gauged into the little Haiti home as the neighbors watched, whispering in Rush Creole. By Monday afternoon, all the walls of the house were gone. Filomena reluctantly opened the doors to Pika, allowing her to take refuge in the back of the Botanica in Jonah's teenage bedroom, where the pillows were plumped, fluffed, and padded to prefigure sleep. A baby was crying somewhere, and Pika thought about the soft lavender color they'd planned to paint the baby's room. She imagined the baby lying asleep on his bed, one fist clenched and raised over his head. Pika remembered a morning sickness. She once vomited on the sidewalk, drenching a colony of ants. Even though she hadn't wanted it, the baby inside her was so much a part of her. Pika often talked to it as she smoothed a blouse down over her slightly rounded belly. Pika checked her cell phone for a text message or any acknowledgement of her existence from Bruno. She stared at her iPhone, touched the screen, tried to will messages to appear. I wanted to give you some time, Bruno said, when Pika finally showed up at his doorstep. His hair smelled like old cigarettes and pine. He was working on a painting of a couple inside a cage. Leaning into the cushions, chewing a thumbnail, Pika rolled onto her back, corpse-like. I couldn't get him out, she said. She curled her feet in toward each other and then pointed them straight down. I tried so hard. Her voice was a shiver. I wanted to tell him I was sorry about the baby. I'm haunted by his astonished look of hurt and disappointment when I told him I didn't want to keep it. Maybe he thought I did something to lose it. Pika rolled onto her side, pulled her knees up as much as she could stand, and cried into her hand. Bruno put down his paintbrush and went into the kitchen to make them each a rum and coke. He handed her a glass, and she sat up to gulp it down. He lay on his back and sipped his. What are you talking about? She grabbed him by the chin, forcing him to look at her. Bruno, don't you want us to be together? He steadied the drink on his chest. We are together. He took up the glass and tipped an ice cube into his mouth and crunched it. Fucking Jesus, he said. You need time to grieve. Do you hear it? Pika asked. What? The baby. I hear it crying. She looked at him. I have no idea whether it was going to be a boy or a girl. Bruno was pale. There's no baby crying, Pika. Bruno didn't answer his door, and his cell phone went straight to voicemail. Pika tried to get a glimpse of him at every intersection, every street corner, every parking lot. On Friday and Saturday nights, she looked for him at Churchill's pub on 2nd Avenue. She attended art shows at the Little Haiti Cultural Center, hoping to see him appear in his beret, turtleneck, and faded jeans. At the Sunday stroll in front of the abandoned Methodist church, transformed into a funky art space for the occasion, she passed young couples with strollers, and she ran her hands over her stomach where her baby had been, and she cried on the inside at its lack flatness. She didn't want to imagine some other woman with Bruno. Eventually, you'll be home, Pika thought. There was a baseball bat sitting next to a chair in Philomena's garden. She grabbed it, then drove once again to Bruno's apartment on 59th Terrace. She would smash the bat into the side of his head, sending him face first into the dirt. She turned off the car's lights and waited in the dark, waited and waited, her hands trembling around the bat until she finally spotted the pickup truck around the corner. An old thing with a sticker on the back window. Maybe Pika would aim for the mouth. Crack! And Bruno will be spitting out blood and chunks of shit that he would only realize later to be his God-given teeth. Pika used to believe in an all-encompassing love. She used to believe that love was a force similar to a god, which was bigger than humans, bigger than loneliness and alienation. But in reality, love always ended. Lovers had a glimpse of paradise, but humanity prevailed. Mistakes were made, lives and loves were lost, and grief made the most bitter sort of loneliness. As soon as he came out of the vehicle, Pika swung. The more Pika missed, the angrier she became, and then she started swinging even harder. Pika, stop, Bruno said, dodging, retreating behind a ylang-ylang tree, but she didn't want to hear. She kept swinging and swinging and swinging, until she heard the baby crying again. Do you hear it? Pika asked. The baby? There's no baby, Pika, Bruno said. She put down the baseball bat, and Bruno didn't try to stop her as she started down the street, swallowed by the Miami shadows, invisible to the Little Haiti hookers, the unshaven men making drug deals beside a dumpster. She followed the baby's cries to her old street, to the place where the house Jonah had built her used to tower above palm trees and bougainvilleas and hibiscus trees. And I'll let you read the rest. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I just want to mention before I start that those of us at FIU in the English department lost 2 colleagues in the last 2 weeks, Philip Marcus and Robert Ratner, and I just want to, I guess this reading is in their memory for me, think about them, and about all our lives. Brief as lightning in the colleague night, as Shakespeare said. My story is set in Otis, which I think of as South Hallandale. This brown field up there near Ives Theory Road, I guess. So that's all. And I'm just going to read the opening, part of the opening movement of the story. A man with a 5-inch lockback knife buried to its heel in his chest stumbles into Cafe Ole on West Dixie, settles into a chair and leans his shoulder against the wall. The barista looks up from his issue of Automundo and sees the bleeding man. Puta madre, dude, you're stabbed. The man says, can you call 911 for me and then bring me a tall vanilla latte and a straw? The barista makes the call. The young girl sitting at a table by the door cries when she sees the blood splattered on the yellow knife handle and soaked into the man's FIU t-shirt. The man with her, who might be her father but is not, tells her to close her eyes and think bright thoughts. The bleeding man coughs and moans. He asks the barista for a towel or a rag or something. I hope you don't mind if I wait here for the ambulance. You can't even breathe out there. He's talking about the shroud of smoke from the fires in the Everglades that has settled over the county. The fires have been burning now for 7 days. The bleeding man looks at the young girl and says, is this the end of the world, honey? The barista brings a towel, the latte, and a straw and sets them on the table. The man says, I can't pay you for this. La casa invita. The man smiles and reaches for the towel. You got no hands, dude, the barista says. The man holds up his locked arms. Look, Ma. What happened? I got stabbed. No, with your hands, I mean. A Miami-Dade police officer walks in and speaks into the radio microphone looped to his epaulette. He's making sure the paramedics are on the way. He nods to the young girl and the man with her and stops at the bleeding man's table. The girl and the man slip their disposable face masks over their mouths and noses and leave the cafe. The officer looks at the knife and whistles. What happened to you, partner? The barista says he got stabbed. Not talking to you, just trying to help. Back the fuck off, Jose. Raphael, the barista says. The bleeding man says flesh-eating bacteria. No, I meant the knife. Who did this to you? Cecil Twitty. This guy that lives in my building and his girlfriend Sparkle. Would you mind peeling the straw and putting it in my latte? The officer bites the end of the paper sleeve over the straw and spits it out. He blows on the straw and shoots the sleeve in a loop across the room. He taps the straw into the drink. And what's your name? Clark Chapman, but they call me Handsome. That's cold. Clark looks puzzled, but then he gets it. I see what you mean. Do you know where I could find Tweety and Sparkle? Clark points with his chin to the plate glass window. There they are, the two Jamokes, across the street in front of Pita Hut. Officer Zane Brophy asks Sparkle to take a seat in the back of his squad car. While he has a word with Cecil, he calls for backup. The paramedics slide Clark onto the gurney and wheel him to the ambulance. Cecil says, that's a $100 German knife right there. Brophy's standing over Cecil, who's leaning on the trunk of the squad car. Brophy waits for the siren to fade. He says to Cecil, why don't you tell me what happened? Aren't you going to read me my rights? Should I? I know my rights. I know you do. Sparkle is pregnant. How old is she? 14 and a half. How old are you? 22 on Monday. Go on. Where do I start? In the middle. Well, we need a car, need cash, need to get out of Dodge. You're speaking in the present tense. I am? This leaving of Dodge will not happen. So I should say we needed a car, but you don't anymore. Cecil coughs black soot into his hanky. Look at the shit we're breathing. So you attempted to rob Mr. Chapman. Sparkle's idea. Why him? For not having hands. Can't fight back, we figured. Wrong. We were drinking this skunky Vino Once. The shit smells so bad it'd knock a maggot off a honey wagon. And I whacked Hanson with the bottle. His eyes rolled back in his head, and he dropped. We searched the apartment. I poured water on his face, and he shook himself awake. Brophy stares down West Dixie, the view diminished and obscured, like looking at the world through gauzy curtains, like the curtains in what's-her-name's bedroom, Monica. His eyes burn. Cecil says, he told us he had no money. Theft 101. Rob the rich. I punched him in the windpipe. He bit me and started barking. I struck him, and he got stronger and ran. You might wonder how a handless man can open a door. Cecil lifts his brow and smiles. A lever, not a knob. So I'll stop there.
We're going to open the floor for questions. We have just a few minutes for a short Q&A, and I'm going to leave all those questions to our fabulous authors because I'm really nervous still. Like, you couldn't tell, right? We're going to be sitting over here, and we're going to be signing books, so you have a chance to grab some books and pay for them over there, and then bring them back, and we'll be happy to sign them for you. Any questions? Yes.
How many authors did you contact to get 15 to say yes?
15. I was very lucky in that I knew offhand about 4 or 5 of the contributors that I definitely wanted, and then once I had that group, I asked some of them if they knew anyone, and I asked them for, like, I had a lot of women, and I wanted to make it split like 50% women, 50% men, and I believe I asked Lynn and John if they knew any male writers, and they gave me some suggestions. So I contacted 15 writers, and they all said yes, which is awesome. Yes, 7.5 men and 7.5 women. Exactly. Yes.
You said the stories are linked. How did that work from writer to writer? Did they read a story or?
What we did, and this is it's a process that was put together by Ryan Rivas and Nathan Hollick. Nathan is a series editor, and he edited 15 Views of Orlando and 15 Views of Tampa Bay, along with John Henry Fleming, which are the 2 other series that are also available from the Borough Press website. And they already had this down. So Nathan sent me a long email explaining everything, how it worked. And what we did is I explained all the rules. And then as each writer had about a week, sometimes a week and a half, sometimes 2 weeks, depending on what was happening that week, to complete their story. So I would send them whatever story came before theirs, and we sort of kept gathering them. And then the second writer had 1 story, the third writer had 2 stories to look at. So they read them, and then they wrote theirs. So we were all reading along as the stories came in. Any questions for the writers about their stories, their neighborhoods, how awesome I am? I'm just kidding. Yes.
Yeah, this is just, I write in the Rhodes magazine and Miami Herald from time to time, and this that came out in the paper was so interesting about the young lady, Connie Ogle, who is reflecting on Miami and its changes and, you know, what's going on now, and as opposed to maybe how it used to be. So I just got something to read. It'll take like 5 minutes, and not even, and about the way it was. It's very short.
Unfortunately, I'm so sorry. No, we're running out of time. We're actually going over the scheduled time, but thank you. We have time for one more question. Yes.
Is there actually a history of sinkholes in Miami area?
No.
Well, I'm not a sinkhole expert. I think there's some in Deltona, and there's the really famous one that was, where was it?
A lot of them are in the Tampa,
Peak,
Gainesville. But our day might come. Our water table is so
Yeah.
high that it's hard to have a sinkhole.
But we do have ghosts.
About the sinkholes, they're pretty much spreading all around now because there's a lot of infrastructure under the ground, a lot of pipes and a lot of, it's like an underground city there now with all the pipings and everything. So this is causing, you know, a lot of emptiness under there. Consequently, a lot of houses, etc., are going down in sinkholes.
So we're gonna move over to the table and sign your books for you. And you can feel free to ask authors questions as you're waiting in line. We'll be happy to talk with you. So thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Actually, I think our courtyard was a sinkhole, but Mitchell had it filled in. So, no, just kidding. Folks, we've got the books for sale behind the counter. The authors will be sitting here signing for you. If you're watching online, give us a call. We'll get one signed. We'll send it to you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming.